But I want to thank you all for coming. We did this 3 years ago. We had 2 people come. And I had asked, oh my goodness, I had someone from DSS here planning. This room was pretty much full of people here to answer questions. So not knowing what was going to happen today, Dr. Pence and I are here. Sheriff Klein's going to be here. And Chief Bonzano and some of our fire and rescue people, Assistant Chief Mayatica are here. And we have Rich Schulman, thank you, who is from All Points Broadband, who has got that company is the one that's going to provide us with our fiber to home broadband. So he's got a presentation. I don't know. I'm going to just go ahead and assume most of you are here unhappy with your reassessments. You can raise your hand. I don't blame you. I was upset with mine too. So I'm right there with you. Someone got up at a board meeting one time said the reason it didn't bother us was because we didn't have to pay tax. That's wrong. I don't get any slack cut because of being on the Board of Supervisors on paying taxes. So that was just as painful for me as it was for you. So, but we can, since Rich is here, I thought, how many are interested in, we got a fair, he's got for broadband. I thought I would let him go first since he lives in Richmond. And he could do his quick presentation, and then whoever wants to ask him questions could kind of gravitate over, and he could try to answer those questions for you. And then we'll just take questions as you have them. I have cards here that I made up. There's one that has VDOT's telephone number if you have a road issue. On the back of it, it has, if you live in a sanitary district and you have a problem, it's got the number you call, like if it's after hours or whatever, for the sanitary, for public works. And then if you live in town, there's the town number on there, so you have that. The other card to care is the telephone number and the email address for Delegate Oates, Delegate Gilbert, and Senator Timmy French. So I just figured it'd be easier to have a card. You can stick it in your pocket or whatever instead of trying to find those numbers when we read them. My card's there, and then Dr. Pence's card's there as well. If you have a question and you didn't want to bother waiting in line or whatever to ask, there's a box there for each of us, and there's pens and note cards there. Just write it down, throw it in, put your number, and we'll try to get the answer for you. So, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, thank you everyone for coming, but I am just going to kind of be over in the corner too. I'm here. I know I saw a lot of hands go up about the reassessment and the tax questions, but I'm prepared to talk about our school's draft budget that's out right now, or any other questions that you have regarding Warren County Public Schools. If I don't have the answer right here today, I'll be happy to follow up with you and get that to you. And that's just really all I wanted to say. But if you have questions about the schools, over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Supervisor said, I came up from Richmond, but I'm here as long as you need me, so glad to stick around and answer questions. Little background on me. I did a career in the military, and then back in 1997, which seems like forever ago, I started doing telecom and broadband issues. And back then, telecom, of course, was dial-up. Nobody knew about broadband and fiber and all those kinds of things. So I've been involved. Since then, I've worked for a variety of companies, but my focus has always been rural broadband. That's kind of what I've done since the very first grants were awarded. The bottom line for us, for the telecom providers out there, is that it's cost. And cost comes down to how many homes you pass, which is your density, and then what the cost is to build. And over my career, that's been the toughest issue that we've had to overcome over all of those years. It's really that last 10% that's the toughest. And it's the place where you all live. I grew up in a rural area. I get it. I actually drove up through, came up through Luray, went to Bentonville and across to Browntown. So I understand why y'all live here. It's beautiful here. But the density makes it hard for providers to be able to do that. So the government has come up with some mechanisms to help out on that. And I think it was probably 3 years ago now, your supervisor worked with 7 other counties, got together and said, hey, we're tired of being forgotten. We want to get broadband to our counties. And she's the biggest proponent that I know of around here to get this kind of stuff done. And so we all agreed to work on a project together, and I'll talk more about the overall project just so you understand it. And that's what we've been working on. So a little bit about, and I'll just try to run through this quickly, and then glad to answer any questions that you've got. I know your questions are going to be, when is it actually coming? Is my house included in the project? And what's it going to cost me? My guess is that's probably your 3 biggest questions that you've got. So I'm going to here's some of the topics I'm going to talk about today. A little bit about All Points, but not much. Where we're building, how we're funded, what's the construction schedule, and an important question for you all, what are the price plans? How do I know if I'm going to get it? And there's a couple different programs that I want to tell you about. All of this should be available to you all, so because there's some websites that you're going to want to go to if you want to confirm whether your house is included or not. And those links will be available for you. This presentation will be available for you. And then I'm going to talk about, so there's the current project that we're doing now, and then there's another one that's just about to kick off called BEAD, and I'll come back and tell you about that a little bit as well. All Points Broadband. So, you may know some of the names of the bigger companies. You say, who's All Points Broadband? All Points Broadband, we're a small company. We're a Virginia-based company. We've got less than 200 employees. Most of them are in Richmond. We do most of our work, some engineering in-house, but like our construction, our business plan is that we get big areas where we can build, and we bring in crews, and we build huge amounts in a very short period of time. We don't come in and work a little here, a little here, a little here. So that's kind of our philosophy. And we're backed by a company called Searchlight that is the deep pockets that's enabling us to do what we need to do. And I say that because we don't get paid on our project until we got the lines coming down your street. So what that means for us is, we don't make money off of the construction. We're not a construction company. We hire contractors that come and do that for us, and we pay for it. We also front load all of the equipment ourselves. So I think we've got a couple of yards here that are in the county where we've got material. I think we've got close to, probably can't say the exact number, but it's a lot of millions of dollars of equipment that we've already bought and that we store. We don't get paid for any of that stuff until we have the project done. The point there is a big incentive for us to get the projects done because we don't get paid for the work we've done, and where we make our money is off of subscribers. And if we don't have any subscribers, we're not making any money. So anyway, again, the point is we have every incentive to move as quickly as we can so that we can start getting paid for the projects that we're doing. So if you haven't heard of All Points before, you may say, okay, well, what do I know about this little company? So I just made some highlights here. We just finished a 5-county project in the Northern Neck, about 10,000 locations that are all lit down there, getting subscribers coming on there. I'm working we're nearing completion. In fact, we may be done in King William and Middlesex County, so we've got projects going there. We've got projects that are under construction right now in Augusta, Culpeper, Hanover, and Loudoun County. They're all big projects, and I'm involved at least on a daily basis. I'm involved in Augusta and Hanover. There's another person that right now is working mostly Culpeper and Loudoun. But my job is to help move the projects along and communicate with boards of supervisors and the community to let them know what we're doing. And we've got projects in 10 other counties as well. Of course, I put Warren on there, but projects that are going in other counties that are as well that are on different phases. None of them are, they're not under construction yet, but those are where the projects are that we've got coming up. How are they funded? I mentioned this, the funding is a big challenge. So for the last 8 years, Virginia has had a program called VATI, V-A-T-I, and that allows localities to compete for these broadband grants. And that's the grant I was talking to you about, that your supervisor worked with us, and we partnered along with these 8 counties to get the funding to do those projects. The program is funded partially by state money, sometimes supplemented by federal funds, and then matching dollars that come from the broadband provider and from the locality. And I'll talk about your specific one in just a minute here. So Warren County is part of an 8-county project that we're doing. It's about 32,000 locations. And the key there is the first number, 126 million. That's what we're putting in. And some of that is Dominion money, because in some areas where Dominion is building some middle mile broadband that helps us out, but that's not going to be the case in Warren. But as you can see, most of the money comes from the private providers. 97 million for the big project, and again, the 8 counties, that comes from the state through this VATI project, and that's general funds from the state. And then 62.5 million is from the county partners. So for Warren, your contribution to the overall project was 6.9 million, and those dollars are all what are called ARPA dollars. So those were dollars that that were allocated to you by the federal government. So they weren't like taxes that you directly got from the county. They're money that came from the federal government. Sometimes I hear people say, well, why is the government giving out money for this or for that? And, I say to people that I'm speaking to is, we're all the beneficiaries of that when we're in the rural areas. And if you don't like that project, or you think, well, we shouldn't get that money, there are a lot of other counties that are willing to take that money. So, the way it is we apply for those projects wherever the funding is available, so we can get the broadband out to you all. So let me talk about that VATI project first, and then come and talk about D, because they're both very, very important for probably everybody that's here. So our construction plan for the VATI project, which is the one that we currently have the funding for here, this is a spreadsheet that's hard to see. That's why I kind of highlighted. The big date on there is July 2025. That's when we're going to be starting construction in Warren. When we start the construction, a lot of work that has to go in there. We're either attaching to poles that we don't own, so there's a lot of work that has to go on the poles to make them ready for us to be able to attach. Maybe somebody else has got to move. Maybe we've got poles got to be replaced because the pole isn't able to withstand adding more facilities on it. It's a real complicated process, and safety is the #1 concern. We work real closely with our electric utility partners because those poles have to be safe. So there are standards that have to be on there. How much weight can you put on a pole? How low can that sag be on the line to make sure that you got enough clearance? And so the electric utilities say, we're glad to let you on our poles where that works. And if not, we may have to replace with higher poles. So we look at it and we decide, okay, going underground is going to be more expensive, but there comes a point where underground maybe isn't quite so as expensive, and that's the way we're at, or it matches the price of being overhead. So we'll go ahead and do underground. So that's kind of a determination that's made depending on where we are. Also, you got to look at what the underground facilities look like. As I was driving, I think I said I came up through Bentonville across to Browntown, and I saw a lot of rock. A lot of rock means that's a lot of work to have to bore through rock to be able to get underground. And very, very narrow areas along the sides of the road. And by the way, people who drive really, really fast on those narrow roads, I notice. So, but anyway, so that's it. So when we start the construction, we'll have all the construction that gets done. Now, we're not going to build all of the county at once and then turn it on. There will be areas that we work on in a sequence, and it's too early to know what that sequence is as I'm standing here today. But there will be a sequence that we work on, and each of those, we call them fiber service areas, will have a big cabinet that's got power to it, and that will provide the light out to that area. So as we get one of these areas built out, we get the cabinet installed, we get power to the cabinet, we get a connection back to the big internet, that's when we light that the first area. So there'll be a sequence that happens in. There's also some delay. I say, in Hanover right now, we're putting fiber up, and people are saying, great, can we turn it on next week? Well, once we build all the fiber, get all the fiber in place, there's a process we have to go through to test the systems, make sure the light is connecting, it's getting back up to the big internet. Usually a week or two in there too. So there's a bit, you'll see, there's a delay there. What I know you will all like to see though, is when you see the trucks out there putting the fiber up or boring through and putting the fiber underground. The project deadline for us, and this is not set by us, this is an agreement between us, the county, and the state who's providing the funding on this, is June 30th, 2026 to have everything built out. We will be doing connections after that, so we don't stop then. The project continues as we're adding people on to the network. When we come to pricing, I want to hit a big important point for you to kind of keep in mind on that. So let me continue on through. Price plans. All right. So I know I'm on camera, so I'm going to see if I can word this carefully. I've got a gig of Verizon service where I live. I'm scratching my head right now saying, I've got the greatest, fastest, best service that I can get. I'm not so sure I need a gig, to be honest with you. I think I can do a lot of what I can do without a gig. My marketing people would not like me to hear that. Hopefully they don't hear this. But you really should consider what the right pricing and speed point is for you. Not everybody needs a gig of speed. So with that, here's our current pricing. And this was agreed at upfront when we started this whole project out, so it hadn't changed. It's $59.99 for 50 meg, 100 meg, which is pretty darn fast, especially if you're coming from dial-up or DSL from another provider that I'm not going to mention. And then the gig speed there. The point I wanted to make that I think is important for you is on the installation charge. So it's a $199 installation charge, but that will cover any length drop that's along the network we're building. And that's a big deal because I know a lot of you have long driveways. And so most places that you go, there'll be an install fee for a standard drop, we call it, and then you pay for what's beyond that. And that can be pretty expensive. So as part of this, when we did this deal and we worked with the county on it, we agreed we'll cover any length of drop that we'll go ahead and cover under that $199. So that's I think, but you have to do that. Here's the big but. You've got to do it within the first year that service becomes available to your area. So you don't want to let a year and a day go by and say, okay, now it's time to connect me up. And now you've got an extra quarter of a mile that you're going to have to pay for that drop. We'll cover a certain amount as a standard drop, but once you go beyond that, you pay more than that. And you don't want to do that. So how do you know if you're in the project area? And this is what I'd say. If you're interested in this, the link is just go to apbfiber.com. And I just made a couple screenshots for this. And when you plug that in, it's going to bring you to the website. And then you'll see, it's hard to see from here, but it says Get Started Today. You'll click on that box. And then you can start typing in your address. So that's what I did. I just started typing in an address. And if you go too fast and you put in RD instead of road, it's not going to show up. It's going to say, oh, we don't recognize it. So take your time, type it in nice and slow. It'll auto-populate for you. And then you can pick your address in there, which is what I did in this example. And then I clicked on it to bring that address in there. And then once I did that, it says, you are inside of a planned service area. Great news. And then what you need to do is you'll see this field over on the right that asks you for information. If you'll go ahead and provide your information in there, we'll then start contacting you. We don't spam you, but we'll start contacting you as things are moving along. So it's a nice way to be up to speed on what's happening. And folks that I know that have done this before say, no, we don't sell your information, we don't spam you or anything else. It just gives you updates as things are happening, which is really helpful for you. And then I've got a bunch of screens that way too tiny a font, but these are some of the marketing things that you'll start seeing as we get closer and closer to the build time. So if you haven't signed up online, then if your address is in our database, you're going to start getting marketing pieces, direct mail. So good reason to sign up on the webpage so that you don't get a bunch of our mail. We'll then do direct mail, door hangers as we're doing the installations. Yep, okay. So that's kind of the VATI project. So I would say if you are not sure whether you're included in VATI or not, and a lot of the district down here is covered by VATI. So get in, plug in your address, confirm that you're in VATI. Now, after VATI was done, that was a few years ago. So you either moved into a house here recently that you built, or you were in an area that was considered to be served because one home in that area was served. And because of the way the federal rules worked, if one home in that area was served, it was considered that everybody had service, which we know is wrong. But that's the way the feds did it. So since then, the feds have come up with a map that's got actual locations. And it's much, much better. It's not perfect, but it's much, much better. So now there are lots of locations that you weren't eligible for the VATI project before because they considered you served, even though you weren't served. And now with this new system, they're able to figure out, oh, this is a home that doesn't have service. And so what they did is they made those, the program is called BEAD, and that, the federal government, yes. So the federal government allocated, I think it's $48 billion across the whole country to build to these locations, these BEAD eligible locations, which are the ones that are remaining. The other thing I meant to mention was the definition of broadband has been changing over the years. It used to be 1.5, I remember. It was 10. It was 25. So as the number goes up and up and up, now all of a sudden, if you have DSL from another provider, that used to be considered broadband, and you wouldn't be eligible for a grant. Well, now that speed is 100 meg. So if you're less than 100 meg, you're eligible for BEAD funding. So, and that gets you hopefully a fiber connection instead of having a DSL or something over the old copper lines. So this BEAD round, there was 48 million that came to the country. Virginia got $1.48 billion to get to, initially thought about 130,000 locations. That number has been changing. Some get added, some get, we found a bunch of locations that we looked at the map, and it's a hay bale in the middle of a field. Obviously not a BEAD location. There's some places that we saw, hey, this looks like it's unserved and it's not on the locations. The feds haven't been as good at adding locations back in, unfortunately, but they've been good about taking locations out. Here's the good news. The federal law requires every BEAD location to get broadband in this next round of funding. The state cannot go to the federal government and say, hey, we're ready for the money, unless they've got a solution for every single location that's listed as a BEAD eligible location. The program opened up for applications in December, and next Saturday is the deadline for applying for it. This is where I have to be careful. We're not allowed to say where we're going. If you think about it, if our competitors know where we're going and where we're not going, that could influence what they're willing to bid on it. So the rules are you can't say where you're going and where you're not going. I can tell you, we're going to a lot of locations in this area, okay? We agreed to do that as part of some other things that we did with the county. So I can't technically say that we're submitting a BEAD application for the South River District, but I can wink, wink, and say we're going to be participating very heavily in Warren County. Once that, and great news is, I think I was here a couple weeks ago at a Board of Supervisors meeting, and then I was just zoomed in to the last one, and your board voted to give us a letter of support on our BEAD application, which gives us some more points to work with. So that's really good news that they supported us on your behalf to be sure that we're able to get some of this additional funding to get to these additional locations. Once these applications go in, the state then collects them all up. They see who is competing where. They look if there's some areas that no one got a bid. They go out and try to find some bidders. So there's a process they're going to go through, and then once they get finished with their process, they'll submit their lists to the federal government. The federal government gives its blessing, and then contracts will happen. When's this going to happen? Publicly, I have no idea. You don't know how long the feds are going to take to do this. I mean, I'd like to see it in 2025 so that these things get done in 2026. And then there's a 4-year build timeline for getting those projects built. 4 years is a long time, but I can tell you, having done this for a long time, it takes a long time to do these projects, and unfortunately. And so that 4 years is probably a pretty reasonable amount of time to do those. And again, the feds have no deadline by which time they have to make their decisions, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of pressure on them to get these dollars moving and out the door because the program is established a long time ago, and there's nothing that's been happening. In Virginia, we're one of the leaders, and we're still at the process of not having selected those locations yet and the winning bids. So when you look at the county, these are the zip code areas. They're not actually zip code areas. They're close to zip code areas. They have another name for them. But these are the areas where applicants will apply for the BEAD funding. And I think most of y'all probably are in that purplish section down at the bottom. Maybe not. But that's where we're going. That's where we are, again, being careful. We are looking at very, very carefully at applying for a BEAD grant for that and other parts of the county as well. And so how will you know if you're one of these BEAD locations? So here's the website that you could go to. This is the address. If you go in and type that address, you'll see a window or a drop down up here where you can put your actual address in there. And when you put your address in there and hit enter, another window is going to pop up down here, and you're going to see what color in the legend you are, and you'll know whether you are a BEAD address. If you're a BEAD address, you're going to be getting service. The state's got to do it. It might not be us. It might be somebody else that's applied and won for that area. But the bottom line is, you'll get broadband out of that process. And again, all this should be available if you want to go back in and plug in that address. That's it. I'm sorry I went way, way long, but I wanted to at least make sure I ran through everything. Glad to answer questions. Yes.
Couple of questions. So that last point, if you're not on the list, because what kind of out there, unique bed and breakfast, old house, whatever, what can you do to get on the list? We're on the survey of census houses. This way.
Yeah. So 2 thoughts. One is, I talked about this state funding for broadband. They are not stopping that process. So there will be additional rounds of funding that come from the state. So it's going to be really, really important to identify any areas that got dropped off for whatever reason and get those on another application route. The more likely thing that's going to happen is, so I'm going to be under contract with a deadline to get to a certain number of locations by a certain time period. And it's going to be pretty stressful to get those done in that amount of time. But as you can imagine, as soon as we have those places built out, we're going to be looking at the places that are easy to get to from there, and we're going to be expanding our network out. There are also going to be areas that we go by as we're building. They're technically not BEAD locations. We're not going to get funded for those. But if we go by a place, there's 2 BEAD locations, and I've seen this on the maps, 2 BEAD locations, and one that's in the middle, and we're going right by it, we're going to serve that place as well.
Yeah. So our federal agency is involved with giving the money to the state.
Yeah. It's called the NTIA, and it comes under the U.S. Department of Commerce. And as you know, there's been a lot of changes. I think they just announced the new Commerce Secretary had been appointed. There's an NTIA person that has been nominated. That election, the nomination for that person will probably happen in the next few months. But usually the next question I get is, well, how's that going to change things?
Is that the dollars, are they in the bank, basically? The dollars that have been allocated in Virginia to 1.4 billion?
I'll just say as much as anything is in the bank, they're in the bank. I mean, I'd be speculating if I said, but let's just say I'm not really all that worried about. In fact, I mean, there's a chance that maybe the new administration makes the rules easier and takes away a lot of the extra hoops that we've got to jump through. And there are a lot of them. So, I mean, that would be a welcome relief for us. Not that I'm advocating for anything, but I mean, thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How confident are you with the timeline that you outlined?
We have got to make it. We've got to make it. So that's where I start with, there's no real choice. Can you do it or you not do it? We're behind. We were behind. That's why the dates were, we got the dates extended out to something that's reasonable now for us to be able to do. The original date, we weren't going to make it. But to give you a little peace of mind, we've just built the 5 counties in the northern neck, got those done and lit up. We're on track building the other counties that we're on. We're still on schedule for those counties as well. And the pressure for us to get them done is incredibly high because there's federal dollars involved, especially for the Warren County project. And if we didn't get it done before December of 2026, that $6.9 million will go back to the federal government. And, by then let's say we're 90% built out. We don't want to lose that $6.9 million because that's part of the funding for the project. So we have every incentive to get these done on time. And the current schedule has us the middle of 2026. That gives you about a 6-month buffer if there was problems at the end. But I live every single day, the CEO, the rest of the leadership, I'm making sure that we get these projects done on time. Sir.
What kind of progress reporting are you going to be providing for Warren County?
So for each county, so I'll give you an example. Hanover County, there's an eastern half of the county and western half of the county. We're under construction in the eastern half of the county. We're going to be starting soon the western half of the county. We meet with them weekly with one of the county supervisors who's really, really involved in the project, a county administrator, and a staffer. And we meet with them every single week. We provide sheets that show where we're going. We have tracking data that we use in all of our projects about how much of the footage has been released to the construction crews, how much fiber has been placed, and we share those. With the county all the time to make sure, because we're partners in the thing. It's not us building. It's you all are partners with us. So we share all the information that we can so that you know where we are. And I'll admit, I get some tough questions. Hey, you said you built this much. How can you do this, and then explain, what the track is for us to be able to stay on track. So, yeah, sir.
To your company's credit, we have All Points experience, and
Where's that?
Lancaster County.
Okay.
Yeah, and once it started, right, the communication was great. We got emails, we got phone calls, the coordination with the installation through the property, and then the final connection to the house. It was all very good. We didn't have to go searching for answers. Okay. On this one,
Wait a minute. There was no but at the end of that?
no, sir. If we really have hard work to do, we go to Lancaster County to do it. Because my copper wire out here doesn't get it done. No names. I mean, I've got 9 and 10 May here. I can type faster than that.
And I'm sure it's DSL, right? Over the copper.
Yeah, hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say that's pretty good. I mean, and as you know, the problem with DSL has always been is the reliability of the copper network. We all know that, and the distances. You can only go 3 miles. So I was guilty of, I'd have somebody call me and say, hey, I'm 3.5 miles, just get me off a dial-up. And I'd say, okay, but you're gonna get really, really slow service. And I want your word. You're never gonna come back and ask me for faster service because I'm giving you something outside our range. And then eventually, you take a couple of years, they call back in. That's it. I remember you. I made a note of who you are. But no, I mean, I realized DSL, and 5 years from now, hopefully, I think a lot of the companies, we don't do any copper. I'd imagine that the companies that have copper are going to be very, very glad to get everybody moved off of the copper network onto fiber, because right now they're maintaining a copper network for a fairly small number of people for a system that used to get everybody service. So again, we don't have copper, so.
Jim? So, hey, Jim. And Jim's question is going to be, he's at 3.1 miles from the cabin, so he's going to ask. The question on this one was, I went to the All Points website, right? And our address is in there. We're within the service area. But then by the end of this, the bead threw me.
Okay, so.
Am I planned for work, or is there still a question?
So if you went to the attfiber.com and your address is in there, you're good to go for the VATI project. That's the one that's underway right now. So that's really, really great news. Yeah. No, sir.
So if everybody signs up for the gigabit service, can you tell us about your backbone and what traffic you can support?
Yeah. I'm not a technical guy, so I won't be able to give you a lot of answers there. All I can tell you is the system is built future-proof with knowing that broadband demands are going to be much higher in the future. We're building to a 10 gig. We're not selling 10 gig. We're building to 10 gig.
Per subscriber?
Per subscriber. Yeah, yeah. So it's a very, and we're also building, other thing I want to mention, we're also not just building for what's there today. We've built in a lot of extra capacity, fiber capacity, so that, a development goes up someplace, we can get in there and be the provider as well. So we're not just narrowly focused on what we currently got. Yes, sir.
Let's say a tree falls on the line. Is there anybody locally that would be able to respond, or is it already contracted to the electric company or somebody if a line does get a tree falls on a line?
Yeah. All right. Let me think about the question for a second. Trying to think what we do in Lancaster. We've got our own crews in Lancaster that would come and probably do that, or we would contract for somebody that would come and do that for us. Yeah. I haven't heard of that being an issue. I don't have a really good answer for you just because I don't deal with it. What's that?
Out here, it's a
Yeah, yeah. But I you'll never see that tree. Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, we're going to be relying a lot on our electric partners, because if we're on poles, when they go down, they've got to get their power back up, and then we come after the power comes back up. Power does you a lot more good before the internet coming back on. Sir.
The only dollars you said you would have to break towers at one spot to light up all this fiber. So is that power backed up? What kind of resiliency?
Yeah, each of those devices, those cabinets I was telling about, the very bottom of it is filled with batteries. I can't tell you off the top of my head how long they hold out for, but those are all backed up with battery backups specifically designed for if there's a power outage. We know that that's the active cabinet that needs the power. There'll be other cabinets that will be around, but those are just split the light, and those are not active cabinets.
But your home won't work without a generator.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. If you have no power at your house, even having the internet's not going to do you a whole lot of good.
Hi, sir. You mentioned that you all brought the fiber to the street. Whose responsibility is it to bring it to the street, to the home?
Okay.
To the home. Do you all bring that, or is that from there?
We have three. The construction is in 3 parts. So we have contractors that are building kind of our, lack of a better term, our backbone. So that's all the stuff that goes along the streets. When you call and place an order, there's another crew that's a contractor that's going to come and do the actual drop to your house, to the outside of your house, okay? Outside of your house. Now, when that happens, it raises a good point. I don't know how big of an issue it is here. In some counties, it's a very, very big issue. So when that happens, they will call in, we'll call in a locate ticket on Virginia 811. That then triggers the providers in that area to come out and mark their facilities. So the power company will come out, mark their facilities, anybody else is out there. They don't mark private facilities though. So if you've got private facilities out there, and you know we're coming down your street, or you come home one day and you see the trucks are down and you've got some private facilities in there, probably not a bad idea to stick some flags in the ground to alert people. If the crew is there, alert them that you've got private facilities there. Because we will not, Virginia 811 only marks public utilities, not the private utilities. Sorry, I got off track. So you have the main line that gets built, you have the drops that go to the house, and then we keep in-house the actual connection in your home. So our person will come in, do the work to get from the outside of the house in, get everything set up for you, test it with you, get your thumbs up if you think everything is working as it should be before we leave. Was that your experience in Lancaster? Yeah, okay, yeah. Because we want to make sure that we've got our folks coming into your house, not anyone else. Sir.
So are you implying that some of those connections to homes might actually be buried connections?
They could be. Yep, it could be. I mean, ideally, you would have a drop that you just put on an existing pole. But sometimes you gotta go underground, bore under a driveway. But our folks will work closely with you on that to make sure that everything goes good. And like scouts, we have a leave no trace. So we'll come back in and any damage that is done, we'll make everything look like it should. What, ma'am?
That 199, the fee that's on there.
Yep.
Is that just for you guys running your cables along the road, or does that include coming to your house? Is that an additional charge?
No, that covers the whole installation. So yeah, we drop everything. Yeah, that's included.
This one follow-up on the federal dollar saying, are you're not having any particular worries about delays being created over the next 6 months, year? Whether that's direct or indirect effects?
Publicly, I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. But there are some indicators that make us think we think things might get better. Hopefully that doesn't show up in the newspapers. Oh well. Other questions? Thank you very much for the time. Thank you for getting the chance to be out here with you all. And if you have any more questions, you can always get in touch with me. And I think the presentation will be available somewhere so that you can get on there as well if you need that web address or anything else again. Thank you.
Thank you for kindly.
Yeah.
I'll go over it.
Checky and Zora Craft. All right, I know we have questions about the reappraisal. Does anybody have questions just for Beth Pence that you wanted to talk to her, or does everybody want to stay in a group and talk about reappraisals?
Where do I start with reappraisals?
They're state required. If I had my way, and I said this at a board meeting, I wish we could just simplify it. I don't know why government has to make everything so difficult, that if you buy your house at $200,000, whatever you buy your house that every 4 years, if that's what the designated timeline is, it goes up a percentage. And that we would make that percentage, and it would not be 200 and some percent, I can tell you that. But that's not the way the system goes. And my understanding of what has driven for the last couple of years our reassessments up is people coming into the community and buying houses at or above market price. And then that raises up. And the short-term rentals have been mentioned as part of that. I mean, we've had people from the West Coast come buy houses for a short-term rental. I personally, as a board, would like for us to look at that and tighten up those and make that a little more difficult for people to come in and do that. I'll try to talk about it. So, that is what I've been told. Now, the reason we went to 2 years, the utility companies and the industrial buildings out there, yours and my home appreciates, even though it may be depreciating in actuality, the roof or whatever, the upkeep we have on it. But when they do the reassessments, they're always appreciating. The utilities start out at 100% the first year of the assessment. Second year, they can drop down to as much as 80%. So they depreciate. So the thought was given to us that coming out of COVID, we had that first round of a high appreciation with the reassessment. And the cars were as well, because you couldn't get the parts. So cars, instead of depreciating, appreciated. And I think anybody that had even an old clunker saw that. People were selling those things right and left and making a mint off of it. Cars have come down some. We didn't raise taxes. That was one thing. We've raised taxes one time since I've been in office and went in 2020. And that was last year to cover the expenses we needed to cover for fire and rescue and the sheriff's department. And we dedicated those funds. And I see it all the time on Facebook. We are not trying to cover the EDA embezzlement. It has nothing to do with that. It's just cost of living. When I first went into office, we bought a fire truck, and you guys correct me, $700,000. Was it the next year that we bought, and it was $1.2 million? That's what we're dealing with. And you'll be able to talk to Chief Banzano. He's sitting back there. If you decide to break up, and he can give you an idea of what the age of the equipment we have and how we are behind the 8 ball of pushing those things and the cost of maintenance on a lot of those things. So we're trying to build that up. Same thing with the sheriff's department. And this year, our planning department came in and let us know that all their trucks have 200,000+ miles on them, and the maintenance on those are not crazy. So that's just some of the things that we looked at to raise that tax. We were hoping that by doing it 2 years, we would come out of that COVID bubble. The real estate looked like it was coming down. So instead of having everybody stuck at that high rate, we were hoping it was going to come in lower and you would get out of it 2 years earlier. That didn't happen, unfortunately. I would encourage everybody to appeal your assessment. I know my husband went down. I can tell you, I didn't even know the assessment had been mailed out till I went to the mailbox, and I heard about that for about 2 hours that night. So, ours hit home hard too. And I appreciate that everybody's being hit hard with these. So I encourage you, do your homework, take pictures, documentation of right-of-ways, whatever to take down when you go. I know if you didn't already make an appointment, February 11th was the cutoff, but you'll have a second chance because we'll have a Board of Equalization. So if you didn't get where you feel like you were, if it didn't change or whatever, you'll have a second chance to go before that Board of Equalization. And if anybody is interested in that, we're looking for people to be on that. We need 4 people, 3 active, 1 as an alternate. So you're more than welcome to come write your name down, and I can send that in, and they can send the application out to you or whatever, because we need people to be on that. If last time we had a lawyer that did land work, he unfortunately, I know he would want to do it, but he had an accident and was not able to be on it this year. We had 3 real estate people on it, and I think everyone was pleased from what I heard, with their interactions with them. So at this point, I will just take questions because I don't know how else to do this. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Walt. I've read, again, reading in the Examiner, that the price of a new home, or not a new home, Warren County home prices went up just under 4% in the last year. And yet, on a different article, I think it was involving the Board of Supervisors, there was a statement that the assessments went up 25%, which is a 2-year term. But still, you get assessments going up 25% when an independent agency is saying it maybe should have gone up at most 8. That's a little puzzling. And on a personal basis, when you get a pair that went up 124% and 174%, so well over double in both cases, it was hard to understand what the basis was for that. I just wanted to let people who hadn't maybe talked to the assessor yet. He explained, well, you abut the river. My lot's abut the river. Very blessed with that. Yes, 200 feet out, 100 feet down. You can't get... So I believe what's happened in some cases, they were looking at, say, a road map and a lot division map and looking, oh, look, it abuts the river. Depending on what kind of special characteristics your lot may or may not have, apparently the previous assessments weren't necessarily considered correct. I don't know how you can, how do I put this? If I was, I like to think that if I was going through this, I would at least consider, hey, how did I manage to go from 100 to 220? And apparently that didn't happen. So it's a little puzzling. We got 8% market change and 25% assessment change. That's tough to figure out.
And see, the Board of Supervisors don't get involved in that part at all. You know, the state requires them. The ability we have is to decide how often we are going to do it. There are some localities, and I don't want to say this to be factual, but I thought somebody said Frederick County does them every year. I think they have their own department, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then I've heard even 6 years out. So I think that is the only thing that, as far as the longevity of how often we do them. As far as that, we pick the Commissioner of Revenue does the legwork of sending out to the RFPs and things through our admin office for bids from these different companies, and we go on her recommendation. So we do vote for that company, but they've been vetted through the staff. So this is a company I've never heard of, but the process they go through is theirs, and I'm going to assume, and I don't like to do that there's regulations set forth with the state on how they do that. I don't personally think just because you live above and you can see the river, yes, you got a beautiful view, should necessarily jack your real estate up, but I can't answer that, right?
Yeah, again, I'm not asking so much of mine as it's looking at the numbers, how any property, if I'm an assessor and I look and I see this was worth $50,000 last year, my computer program's telling me it's worth 120. What? Wait a minute.
You either catch your time's up. Oh, I don't. Just a quick.
I'm not sure I heard all of this past. I think the burden, as I heard at least, had to do with the transparency of the model that the assessors use. Other places I lived, we kept the assessments trail input, and it was relatively easy to talk to them about a major increase. She knew exactly what variables went into that equation, and you could say, well, you got that wrong. We don't actually see that river, or we live that far away from the lake. But here I've gotten the impression that it's kind of a black box, and we're left to guess why our track went up 150%, and yes, the one next door went down 10%. Was there a way to access the model, variables that they use?
I will get with the chairman of the board and ask him if we can request the company to do that presentation so that they can get it, have it up on a PowerPoint like this so that then we can disseminate it out. I think that would be the best way to handle that. Yes, ma'am, your hand was up.
When I moved here, assessment was every 3 years. Why has it changed to 2 years?
The reason it changed to 2 years was because we were trying to keep those utilities and the industrial at par with what we're doing at 100%. If you wait 4 years, 1 year it goes down 80%. At 3 years it would go down again, and at 4 years they're down here, we're still up here. So the thought was do it every 2 years, we would keep them at a higher level.
Will it be helpful to the community change it back to 3 years?
That is something we can definitely talk about. We changed it from 4 to 2. We can talk about stretching it back out. The only thought on my part with that was, you know, when it was explained to me about the utilities and keeping them up more at parity with us, is also if you're in that high time zone, you're stuck in it for 4 years. But it looks like history is telling us they're not going to come down much anyway. So that's just, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did tell him because she was.
Yep. So the assessor that you are using has a statewide reputation for coming in with really high assessments. And certainly that was my experience working on the Reform EDA board, where we got estimates from free assessors. Theirs was sky high compared to the other two. So to me, one of the quick questions is the process by which you figure out who you're getting and making sure that they're going to come in with reasonable assessments. So I don't know if you're, what the process is, how you're doing it, if you're asking them for samples, assessments so that you can get a sense of what they're doing or other things. So I'm just curious about that.
No, and Dr. This thing might squeal like T-course in front of it. And that's something that I'm definitely willing to put the work in to look at that because I don't want to overburden this county. I understand. I've lived here my entire life. I know we are not, I don't think anybody in here probably wants to turn into a Fairfax. I certainly don't. And I don't want to raise taxes. I worked very hard to keep taxes down, and it broke my heart last year to have to raise taxes. But at the same time, our core services are schools, fire and rescue, and law enforcement. And all three of those need a lot of money. It's just the fact of life. You're not going to keep people here unless you pay them a good salary. And how can I not want to provide these guys that, and girls, because we got females, law enforcement, and firemen, how can I ask them to put their life on the line and not pay them a decent living salary at the same time? Teachers as well, we're having a hard time, and you can talk to Dr. Pence about that, of retaining teachers here. I mean, we cannot compete with Loudoun, Fairfax. My goodness, we're having a hard time competing with Fauquier now. I think Frederick County's in about the same boat as we are now. They're losing them fast or furious to the other counties. So, balancing that out, not overburden the community, but supporting these folks that take care of us, it's a hard balance. It truly is. And but these reassessments, I will be honest, made me sick on the stomach. I have worried about it since I worried about doing the 2 years, and I thought it was going to be a good thing if the real estate went down and people weren't burdened with that high reassessment from the 4. So, I'm open and I'm willing to listen to everybody. If you've got suggestions, those cards there, write them down, put them in my box, and I will be glad to take them into consideration. And definitely, do the appeal. If you miss the date for the appeal, make sure, and I'll get it out to you to do when we get the Board of Equalization. We will lower the tax rate. It has to be lowered. You cannot raise taxes more than a percentage. So it will definitely go down. How much it's going to go down, I can't tell you. But it's definitely a problem when people can sell their house for a lot of money down in the northern area or another state, come in here with cash money in hand and buy a house over market value. Why that's going to make everybody else's house go up is craziness in my thought, but it does. That's what they're using as the excuse. And that's another thing I think we need to look at is if the short-term rentals are doing it, I think we need to look at how we do those and tighten that up a little bit. Yes, sir. Mr. Jenkins, he was raised.
Yeah, I've been looking at the budget, something online, and you're talking about the education and what we have to pay the teachers and so forth. I think the budget request this year for the schools is about $80 million, somewhere close to that. And there's probably 5,100 or 5,200 students that attend Warren County schools. And that works out to like about probably $14,000 per student. Have you compared what it costs here to what it costs in Fairfax? Because you're trying to compare what the teacher should make and what they make in Fairfax. So I'd like to know how much it would I called to educate a student in Fairfax County versus Warren County. Because $80 million is
It is a lot of money, and I would have to let Dr. Pence do that. We have not met this year to go over their budget with them yet. Yeah, I know in the past there has been a breakdown sheet, I don't know if they're doing it this year, where you could look at the whole state and what each county pays per, the teacher salaries, they break it down in different categories.
so it's come down that the boss be right at as a determined citizens feels for.
I agree. And in the past, we have met for much longer than 20 minutes.
I just heard you say about next week. It is actually March 25th when we meet with the Board of Supervisors to go over the full school budget. But also, when we do our teacher scales each year, we do try to look more at our surrounding counties versus looking at Fairfax and Loudoun, because we know we won't have those teacher salaries here in Warren County. But you're right, and I don't have the most recent update of those comparisons, but that is something that each time we readjust those teacher salary scales, we try to look and see what are our surrounding counties doing, so we attempt to stay somewhat in line with those counties closest where someone might commute out or commute in to Warren County.
Well, when I look at the budget, on this right, there's up every year $3 million. That budget increases the total, for the entire county. In order to get that extra $3 million, you have to get those tax dollars from someplace.
Yeah, there's a lot of state and federal money that's in that. It's not all county money. Of course.
There you also as they see it if U.S. federal way avenue, what's to stop all the rain check everywhere. Dummy back here, Paul right down there, T right down there. There you done, you stop out there. Larry the Burmere cheats that county that's due your mouth, it's started on a ball field. 18 months down, you don't get that.
The money for the ball fields, to clarify that, and what Mr. Jenkins is talking about is out at Rockland Park, there's a big master plan of what recreational things could be done out there. And when Taryn Logan was with the county, she started a process of applying for a grant through the federal recreation, I I can't think of its official name right off the top of my head. But it's a grant that is a match. So we get 4 million, but we have to have 2 million of it our own. When people come here and stay in the hotels, motels, or the short-term rentals, there's a lodging fee that goes on with that. That money has to be used for tourism. So, increasing taxes would not be part of a need for the Rockland Park. We would take those tourism dollars to match that grant. And we don't have to have it all up front. So right now, I think we've got 500,000 to make us the first. And I think I hope I don't mess this up, I think 3 years. So the hope is when people come in, stay, and that money accumulates, we would use that to offset that matching. It is all, I agree with you, it's still taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, you would get each $600 a year for a lot of tax. You would use somebody's from here. So now to take that money that you had over here with the ball fields, you got to have to replace it over here.
Well, but it's a tourism, so it's not like I can use it and stick it in the general fund to pay for other things other than tourism.
That's what is it had not received the grant. Would you be pursuing to construct the ball fields if you had not received a grant? Because it's paying you $2 million of so far.
Here's what is important to me, if we hadn't gotten that grant, I would still want to find some avenue to make at least 2 fields for girls softball. Because I don't know if any of you have girls in softball, they have 1 field. And each spring, they've been inviting me to go down to their open ceremonies, which they have on the Bing. We had to fight to get them on the Bing, but we got them on the Bing. And that field is full. I think there was close to 300 girls from 5 to seniors in high school. In order for that many kids to be able, and some of the little girls are on T-ball or what all the little ones do with boys. But then you get up to the girls' softball teams, and, they got to have a place to play and to practice. 1 field for that many girls, that's a shame. It really is a shame. So to me, if we decide we can't do this and we back out and let that grant go, I still want us to try to figure out something for these girls, because it's just not fair that we don't have something. And I even had a contractor come up to me after the meeting and said, let me know, we'll get some contractors then and we'll figure out a field somewhere for these girls. So there are people that want to help. Ma'am, and then I'll get back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Are there ways for the county to raise money besides taxes?
We get some federal money and state money as well. And then the fees for services, like there's fees if you want to use some of our buildings, you pay a fee, like at the community center. There's fees for building permits, all of those things. But the biggest amount comes from personal property and real estate tax.
But are there other ways to raise the money?
Like volunteer, like Humane Society and events.
Fundraisers? I bet you if I went on and I said, we need a fundraiser for the county's, general fund, everybody'd say, I'm already getting way more, especially after this reassessment.
Just say I'm more separately onto the soccer.
That would be something that could go through the girls' soccer league organizations. That could be.
Okay,
I don't know how all that would actually work, but they do have a league association, so that would help. Somebody.
didn't towns sell bonds or something to raise money?
We've been trying not to borrow money. We started, when I got on the board, we were somewhere between 145, maybe $150 million with debt service. And we've been paying $11 million a year on that. We haven't borrowed any money since then. We just did allow Fire and Rescue to go under a lease agreement type thing, but we've been paying down our debt, and we're down to, I think, about 115 million, 110, somewhere in that vicinity. So we've been trying to pay down our debt and not borrow money. Yes, sir.
That's two things. One, just going back to the reassessments. Oh, as far as guidelines for appeals, are you hearing anything, any wonderings if there are holes in the guidelines that we might want to be aware that there are additional things we can do that would support our appeals? And then the second question, if you're taking more questions on recreation, I'm somebody who suffers muscle loss in the wintertime, which I think probably we all do to some degree. I would love if we had some kind of initiative toward indoor facilities beyond, setting up a subscription at a local gym, but something that's real athletically oriented.
No, I agree with, after taking my grandchildren down to the wharf in Warrenton, I said, why don't we have one of these here? That's an indoor aquatic, and I think they had a workout room and all that. Yeah, it's a pretty cool place to go. And I said, I hate going down there spending my tax money when I could do it up here. That is something, but it's a future plan. Like I said, we've been concentrating on our core responsibilities, and that's the fire department and the sheriff's department and the schools, and what you have left over after that. So it's something definitely to think about.
But back to the reassessments, as far as the guidelines for
Reassessments, and I will tell you, the perfect person to talk to you, because he is so meticulous, and I'm going to put him on the spot, is my husband, who's sitting over there. He worked on that thing for a week and went in, presented his stuff, and like I said, for 2 hours, the night those things got out of the mailbox, I heard his complaining. So, I was all ready for him to come out, that was a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. He didn't. He felt like it was very much worth his time to go. And what he had gathered as far as to justify his, request for consideration. So like I said, I'm putting him on the spot. He's going to hate me for it. But he's sitting over there, and if you want to talk, he can tell you what he did as far as researching, taking pictures, and to go in to make it smooth when you do.
So is there a taxpayer guideline for online? Or is there
I don't know that there's a guideline.
put something together since it affects every landowner, or is that not a thing? There.
I'm not sure. I know last time the gentleman, that company, he did get up in our meeting and make a presentation of, bring this information in will help. And the type of things were like if you have a graveyard, if you're next to a junkyard, those kind of things.
So you just Google, how do I appeal my real estate taxes? It'll come up with a list.
So okay.
Cheryl, if I may,
You guys.
found a little bit disconcerting when the inspector came by to check our property out in terms of buildings, acreage, etc. In fact, the inspector has come by twice. A year ago, he came by before we actually had our occupancy permit, and I had to explain to him, we're not living here yet. I don't know what you're going to do in terms of assessment or anything else, but realize the county needs to issue the occupancy permit before you can do anything here. So he left. The same gentleman came back this year, young man, working for the company out of Luray. And he said, I'm here to take measurements. And I said, fine. And I said, we have improvements here. You need to note those as well. And I asked him the question. I said, do you not have information from the county building office, permit office, in terms of what we have paid for in terms of permits, square footage, number of stories, number of bedrooms, et cetera? He said, we do not have access to the county information to build the job. Okay? I said, well, I find that surprising. So I led him around. We cussed the measurements of the inside and outside. Everything done. And he said to me, he said, okay, I've got everything I need here. I said, great. He left. The assessment came out. The drawing shown in the assessment, which you get if you look it up online, was incorrect. We had to call the office in Lurie to get it straightened out in terms of square footage, first floor, basement unfinished, basement finished. And it just makes me wonder, what's the quality control procedures these people have implemented in terms of making these assessments? We hear talk about a model and pricing and everything else. I also hear rumors they simply go to Zillow and look at a number and do their assessments looking at all of that. The gentleman who was sitting here by me has some back problems. He stood up. I'll speak for him. His house was priced at $100,000 over an identical house down the street, a block and a half, to what was built by the same builder, same square footage, everything. If that isn't a misnomer, I don't know what is. You got to be very careful about how this information is generated and what's done. Thank you, Cheryl.
Those are questions. And again, if you write them down and put it in there, and when we get them, then I can read those off and have them explain that when they do their presentation. I can look at this and try to write it down, but if you write them down for me, I'd appreciate it. This gentleman, and I'll get to you.
Yeah, I want to talk about Panhandle Road. Is there any plans to get the last 3 miles of Panhandle Road paved? And there's places on Panhandle Road you can't get 2 cars on it, and that.
I just went through there the other day. I understand exactly, and we have to assess that.
It is a state road.
It is a state road, and I've actually reached out to the federal government people, Ben Klein and that group, and I went up on the mountain when Senator Warner was up there. I shook his hand, and I said, he said, how have you been? I said, I'm fine, how have you been? And I said, if you have any extra money, I want it. Because federal recreational money was put out to improve areas so that people could get to the trails and things. And I said, I've got a road that has forestry land and a tributary off the Appalachian Trail that people go to all the time, but it's very hard. And I said, and if there was a forest fire, because I thought of all the options I could throw out there to get the federal money to help with this, I said, if there is a forest fire, you're not going to get the big equipment needed to fight the fire on the mountain on that road. And I said, most of the land along the worst section is federal land. I said, so if we could get some federal money to add to the state money, then we could finish that middle portion, because the southern end is done, the northern end is done, and you have that middle section there. So I am trying. VDOT says if we were to put that on our 6-year rural rustic plan, that we wouldn't get any more roads done probably 10, 20 years, because it would be over $1 million to do that. So I have been advocating for it, because I do see the need. And I'm going to try to talk them in to at least going to the top, because it's at the bottom of the southern end of Panhandle. Getting up to the top, it's a washboard all the time. They can come grade it today, and in 2 days it's a washboard again. I do understand that. So I am trying, and I never thought I would walk up to a senator and say, I want more money, but I've been doing that a lot lately, getting out of my comfort zone there. So I understand the need and I'm trying.
What does it take to get all the dots 6-year plan?
You request that to be on it to your supervisor, and then I tell our public works director, and they go out and they do the analysis of it, and there's a rating system that they use. They turn that over to VDOT. But I can tell you, I think it has been done. There's been conversation. I don't know if the middle section has ever truly been on the 6-year plan because of that would be more of almost a construct. I don't think you wouldn't get enough out of that with rural rustic. With rural rustic, they try to stay within the existing road. And we both know it needs to be widened out in order to really make it what it needs to be. So that would be more of a constructed road, but it could start out on that 6-year plan to just get it started. And but I can tell you, there are roads that have been on the 6-year plan for a long time. So it takes a while for the funding to come in and for it to rise to the top. But you put the request into me, I'll push it forward. I don't have a problem with that. Michelle.
So I know we all pay a lot of taxes, and I live on Bidden Mill Road, which looks like a trash yard because it's just terror. I mean, I don't know, even 340. The trash trucks come all weekend long, even on Sundays. I didn't think they were supposed to come on Sundays. They're out there running before I've been to church on Sunday. So I guess my question is there any right switches? Are they supposed to just run all the time? I thought they were supposed to be covered. I've called, the numbers heavy. We're dumping trash everywhere. Nothing happens. So what do we pay all these taxes for? I know school, but there's, other things that wouldn't take that much to kind of clean up. It's the piece I used to live in such terrible country that they don't care about. And then one of the assessments, we got the part of the assessments and we get the transfer station. I don't understand, I guess, why notes are passed from assessor to assessor every year. And my car bedroom numbers were wrong. I said our house was much bigger than it was, so I agree with that, Joe. So it's just very inconsistent. It's hard to build trust with your community when it keeps being inconsistent.
No, I understand that because we get the same piece of paper every year over a trailer my husband and his dad own, a house trailer. And I hear that from him every time the envelope comes in. Why do I have to fill this out every year? Because it hasn't gotten any longer or any shorter. It's just gotten a year older. Why do I have to keep filling this paper out? So, and I have asked that question, but it still comes in the mail. As far as the trash, oh my goodness, I hate that trash, and I had fussed about that trash.
They had an ordinance at one time that it's supposed to be covered because they wouldn't even let that dog. It's not even a pickup truck. If they could enforce the laws, it would help us locals from picking up trash in front of our house and in the road along the side every day because nobody ever, they go by all the time and you can see trash cans, loose bags, crayfish flying out the damn vehicles, and just something, a tarp government would eliminate a lot of that.
It's called failure to secure your load. And you as a citizen, if you get behind somebody and stuff is coming off of it, write their license plate down. You can get a warrant for them for that.
I mean, that was supposed to have been, they started out like that, and it lasted a matter of months, and then it was gone. Nobody ever, if they enforce it where they can't dump, they would have to cover, wouldn't they?
You're supposed to cover your load. You're supposed to secure your load.
And to the push stash. I said, as long as they keep letting them go through without a covering, shoot, they ain't gonna cover it up. That takes an extra 2 minutes out of their day.
No, and I do try to work with RSW, those guys, to come out, and VDOT, because I asked VDOT to tell me when they're going to be mowing, so that I can ask RSW to pick it up before then, so one piece of paper doesn't become 1,000 pieces of paper. I'm as frustrated as you. It looks awful, and how somebody can dump a mattress off, go to the transfer station, and then go home past their own mattress, and they won't pick it up is beyond me. I feel your pain on that. I haven't said it in my report for a while, but it is. But you can get the license plate. Everybody, if you're the passenger, take a picture of the darn car, and take it down. Get a warrant out for them.
More often than not, though, you just find it. It's there. You know. Yeah. And like you say, some Saturdays and Sundays are the worst.
Then build cost. Fine. It will numbers better way to pro.
Send that to me, please, when you get that. I'll be glad to make a phone call on that too. I don't mind griping about it. It looked bad, I don't like it any more you do. This is our end of the county. It's to me, the most beautiful end of the county. I'm just sorry, but it is. And, you've got your Skyline Drive people coming in, you got the state park, and you want it to attract tourists so they spend their money here and then go home. But I want it for us as well. It just shows a lack of respect for your area, but I don't know about that. I can ask, and I don't know. I know it's open. I didn't know there was any restrictions one way or the other for that. But you should secure, and we will give you free. The Anti-Litter Council buys those nets, and they're free. All you got to do is ask for one. We'll give you one. It is an enforcement thing, and it's hard. I have stopped along the road, picked the bags up when we're in the pickup truck, and I can throw them on the back of the pickup truck. And I have gone through and I've given the sheriff's department pieces of paper and said, here's the picture where it was, here's the information I got out of it, do with it what you need to do.
Get our money.
I don't know, because I don't follow up with it, but I did my part. I knew I picked it, because, where it's safe to do, I do. Right?
Many citizens do their part, but it's the higher ups that don't follow through to change it.
Yeah, but I am aware, and I wish I had a better answer, except that I am pushing it and trying to get it cleaned up as often as I can with the people from the RSW. And Russ Gokeson's been really good to work with, and he gets them out as quickly as he can to pick them up.
Would they respond to your appeals?
I think they're saying 6 weeks is what they said. We won't do anything with those until probably May. I think that's when the ballpark is to set the tax rate in that area. So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You should have time, yes. We need to get that board appointed and up in the next couple of weeks. That's why I said if anybody has a level of expertise and you want, the people that I have talked to have been on it before, so they enjoy doing it. So, yes, sir.
The assessor told me when I had the conference about 11 days ago.
Yeah, something like it would be 6 to 8 weeks before he got the way he put it was, in 6 to 8 weeks, if we make a change, he didn't say I, he said if we make a change, you'll get a mailing in 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
No, it's our here, but I'm going to give my turn to this lady at Brisbane.
Oh, sorry. About that.
Somebody's asked this question before because I'm hard of hearing. But is there a maximum percentage that the actual tax paid can go up either each year or each assessment?
The tax rate?
Tax and tax paid. Not the taxes, but the actual tax that a person pays is there a maximum percentage that it can increase each assessment for each year?
What they assess it at, we don't have any say in, but we have to equalize the tax rate down. So it was 65.5 prior to last reassessment, and we lowered it to 49 cents to equalize it. So
Sorry. I don't know if anybody else heard, but I could get it just
Asking if there was a cap.
my question really was, each year, a percent, when I lived in Montgomery County, they could not increase your actual tax paid per property above a certain percentage.
right, we can't equalize it down, and we can't increase it above 1% of that.
Of the amount received. What get received more than 1% increase from any.
Right. If you equalize it down, and then if you want to do a tax increase, you can't go right 1% above that.
I think you're answering for total tax. Are you asking if my tax was $1,000 last year, if my tax was $1,000 last year, can it go to $1,500? Can it go to $2,000? Can it go to $3,000? Is there any maximum number? That's what I'm understanding from your questions.
And I don't believe you're actually. I don't think there is.
I don't think it's. I don't think so, because it would correlate with the level of reassessment that she had. That'd be interesting figuring out how Maryland and does that. I mean, like I said, I to figure out how we do reassessments because we're required to, but keep it from being so exorbitant. I'm more than willing to figure that out with people. Because like I said, I don't want to be gouging the community. And I certainly don't want us, for people to feel like they're being taxed out of one county. That's certainly, I don't think any of the Board of Supervisors' intention here at all. Certainly not mine. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Just, you get our keel. And I've got to say, a fellow that we talked to looked like he was kind of making it up as he went along, in the sense that he was really tentative on what the rules were. He was not real clear about where the property was and how to find it. And he also said, he admitted that they had, to use his word, trouble porting data over into this new software system that they have been forced to use. And we left that meeting at zero confidence that there was any kind of a system that was applied fairly and equitably across all properties. So full of holes and so subject to that kind of glitchy software they got. It took the sides left me shaking my
Unwood assessors.
Well, that feedback will help, at least for me, in determining if that name comes up again for future reassessments. That the feedback helps us know, okay, we've used that company. It didn't seem to be that well, so I appreciate that.
Companies that would.
I know Wingate used to do it. Seemed like Wingate did them for quite a few years. Pearson did them last time. And like I said, the group that vetted these and recommended, I don't know.
Decide what.
It was between the Commissioner of Revenue and our admin staff that put out their requests for bids and then vetted them. And this just teaches me I need to get more involved in that process. Yes, sir.
Jill, this to do probably a bad question to follow on the tax question, but a point of concern, and you're familiar with where we're coming from, is the emergency services available to where we met ours. We have a fire station in Brownstown. It's the closest facility, but it's, from what we understand, it's inadequately equipped to handle significant events in our neighborhood. Can I ask what's going on, what's being done to supplement that's level of service?
I'm going to ask Chief Bonzano to come up on that one. Question about the substation and service level. Sorry. You want to come up?
Why I'll be stabbing any? Is that the question? No, I understand the equipment that's there may not be suitable. It may not be adequate to address the house fire.
Right. So, very flashy. Thank you. No easy answer to this. When I first moved to the community, thank you very much. Question? Thank you. So when I first moved to the community, which was a little over 4 years ago, the Browntown community had me actually out to speak to that specifically. Why isn't it staffed? Is there a better location for it? Can we consolidate to 2 firehouses, which are all being looked at right now in a staffing study? The Board of Supervisors actually approved it, I don't know, some 6 months ago, and we just had our first meeting with the consultants. The answer to all of this is yes, and in its entirety of the 219 square miles. The dilemma is we're playing catch up in this community in its entirety for all the reasons that we're discussing today. The issue of finite resources, very little strategic thought in regards to capital, very little strategic. No, I'm not giving you a song and dance because I wish I brought the infrastructure from where I was with me, but simply that's not the case. There is so much of this community in its entirety that's underserved. And I say that to you because not only on the primary response, but also on the secondary response. We've done a lot in a very short period of time, and that's a shout out actually to the Board of Supervisors and the volunteers that are in the room, along with the career staff in the back of the room together. But there's no perfect solution. So Cheryl, I think, identified it really honestly earlier. That same fire truck I spec'd in 1984 was $180,000. It's now 1.2, now $1.3 million. So that strategic thought has not been there. Now we're doing it. We're putting the proceeds together. We're talking about long-term strategic goals. Those are happening. It's going to take some time. I miss more calls, as an example, in the town of Front Royal 3-4 times over than I'll ever serve in the Browntown community. And I'm 1.8 miles from the substation, may I add. So from a selfish standpoint, I'd love to put paramedics there. I ran a new fire truck and all day long, 24/7, 365. We're trying to do the best we can given the circumstances. That's what we're up against. No easy fix, but we're on it, and we're playing a lot of catch up, and none of it's cheap. I met with Cheryl, one of our colleagues, 3 nights ago, regarding is there an appetite for some form of a referendum moving ahead, being very specific to fire and rescue and the needs. The 3 priorities we've set forth in this organization is safe staffing, and frankly, it's deplorable. It is not safe. If anything, that's counterintuitive. It's not. We are making some moves in the right direction. We've got now every firehouse in the county staffed. We've got paramedics on all 3 shifts, albeit imperfect. It's not even close to where it should be, but we're moving the needle in the right direction. And there's a whole host of subcomponents below that. The second priority is facilities and facilities management, your point of the Browntown station as an example. And then finally, the issue of just ensuring that we have apparatus, mission critical apparatus, may I add, that's able to go down the road safely. We've got an apparatus way beyond its end life, way beyond its end life, that we're piecemealing along to stay alive. And I'm being very candid. Lorraine Smeltzer, Alan Brockware in the back room there, I went to them hat in hand in the Bentonville community, and again, I lived in Browntown. And I said, hey, listen, well, you guys, historically, the volunteers bought all the apparatus. But guess what? The volunteers, and I say this to you respectfully, there's a lot of hard work that goes in that back there. The numbers are depleted. People don't have the time in order to commit this anymore. So I went to them and I said, look, can we do this together? Little atypical, but let me go to my boss and say, can we split the difference in the cost of a piece of apparatus, understanding the needs for the community, because their piece of apparatus they have in their firehouse right now is almost 30 years old. So, great question, and I wish there was a simple fix, but I'm not going to blow sunshine. It's going to take some time. Part of that staffing study is to honestly look is whether either the substation or the Bentonville firehouse is that the right place for that firehouse in its entirety to serve that community? Is there a better place? Or could it be Poorhouse Road? And then serve both parts of that community, understanding that demographics are forever growing. So we're not ignorant to that. We're working with GIS, we're working with planning and zoning, we're working with people at a third party to come and kind of give it an objective look. Answer your question?
It's a lot of hard work to come up with a concrete plan from a system that didn't keep up with our growth. I understand all. But my question comes from, when my 9-bay cable was working, I turn on the news and I read about countrymen that are losing their homes to unexpected fires and forest fires. And we had a forest fire. I can look around the room and point to a dozen people I recognize that all live up against our wonderful forests. Where fire comes out of that hill and it'll lose my house because you're not going to get there. You can't get to me because I know how long it takes to get to you. Right. And if it's going to take 30 minutes, that's 45 minutes. It's going to take that long. And I'm in that group that's reading some of the lessons learned from California, where they were sucking out in swimming pools to fight their own fires, which is not atypical. And that's just something that we're going to have to look at. I don't want to have to depend on that, though. That's sure, and nor do I. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm okay with it either. We're looking at it's the issue of competing interests and finite resources and how best to underwrite the future. I asked for the Board of Supervisors, 2 weeks ago Thursday, for 9 positions, a ladder truck, which is way beyond its end life, as well as a fire truck. All of which I can show you specifically why we need it. How do you underwrite the future? Is it a referendum? Is it a conversation about where we prioritize? That's where we're bringing a third party in, so you don't have to hear your old fire chief tell you what he thinks. If we can bring some data and some specific data elements to ensure the need. Regardless of how we do it, the cost associated with it is significant. So what I would say is, as we look at 1, 3, 5, and 10 years, and we look at a strategic plan, we try to stay true to those goals, understanding it's not going to be perfect, and move the needle in the right direction. That's what we're trying to achieve. Thank you very much.
Got a question over here.
Yes, ma'am.
I live in Lakefront Royal District, which is part of South River. Yes. And I live at the top of the mountain, and that mountain is called Gap Mountain. And there is an old fire lane that runs from the top over to Chester Gap. Nobody takes care of it. The forestry don't take care of it. The fire people don't take care of it. If we had fire below us, we would not be able to get out.
Want that? I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I'm familiar exactly where you're at. But I know somebody that is. Yeah, he's roaming around here somewhere if he didn't run away. Chief Maetica lives in Lakefront Royal as well. I'm sure you can kind of speak to it. But to the end, I'm not going to ignore your question. Let us take a look at it and see what we can do.
Yes, probably a chance in a million, and yet all those people in Los Angeles thought theirs was a chance.
No, it's a fair question, and I understand where you're coming from. But again, we'll make the assessment and answer your question. Okay, I'm not going to say it's going to be a great answer, but I can be sure I'll talk to this gentleman back here and we'll look into it. One of the citizens pulled me outside a moment ago. He has a similar concern about the Browntown community. So absolutely, yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other question? Thank y'all.
Thank you. I was at a meeting, one of your POA meetings, where that was brought up, and again, Assistant Chief Mack, my understanding is there's a gate or something there as well.
It's private property.
That the former owner allowed it, so I think it's just a matter of conversations and getting people together to.
Sure, it's been brought up for years and nobody does anything about it.
There's the thing, we just talk, how can we do the walk thing, so I hear you. And I will take this time to make a plug for fire and rescue volunteer side, because I go back to when my husband was a volunteer at 15, my brothers volunteered. When I worked at the hospital, I did a lot of running with the volunteers before there was Valley Transport. The volunteers were the ones that took people to Charlottesville, to DC, wherever it needed to be. And things have changed, but volunteers are still needed. And you don't have to ride the fire truck, or you don't have to get in the rescue squad. There's a lot of administrative work in each of the fire departments. There's always a need for a secretary, treasurer, all those positions, and fundraising. When you talk about fundraising, the fire departments are the best place to volunteer to do some fundraising, and I try to get to all of them that I can, but that's a struggle. I know for Company 3 for years, bingo, and bingo is, people are hardcore about their bingo. There used to be, I think, a night of every week in Lorraine, what was it, Monday night for, I think it was Monday night for Bentonville. And, the money Bentonville had with the leadership that was there, it was made off of bingo and selling chickens, barbecue chickens. They did a lot of work. So just because we have paid guys now, which God bless that we have paid, and God bless we still have volunteers that ride the fire truck and the ambulance. But with the required training, if you've got a family or a full-time job, it's really hard to be a volunteer, an active volunteer as far as EMS and fire. But to support the system, you can be what used to be called an auxiliary, now, I don't know, associate, what are we? But you get it, it's like having a second family, I'll tell you that. It's very fulfilling to get in and be doing stuff with these fire departments, so I always try to encourage that.
Hey Cheryl, what's the status of the sheriff department trades?
That is basically on hold, and that's another thing we should have asked Chief Bonzano. And Jerry, you're here. You're way too quiet tonight. What they're doing now, and you correct me if I get this wrong, we've always talked about having a training facility that could work for both. So they are teamed up, and have you gone on any of these trips yet?
Not yet.
All right. You can come up here and tell them. I don't have to.
Don't need a microphone, right?
You don't. You're welcome there.
Yeah, so as Supervisor Cullers alluded to, and thank you for those that don't know me, I'm Jerry Myatico, and I serve as the Assistant Fire Chief and Fire Marshal for the county. And it's been a priority of ours, likewise as the Sheriff's Office, to offer a fire and rescue training facility. So listening to the Sheriff and what her needs are, looking at what fire rescue needs are, Chief Bonzano, Sheriff Klein have kind of partnered to look at what, both departments need. There's no sense of building two sets of classroom buildings when we could utilize a joint type facility. While the sheriff has indicated she needs a firearms type range, we've indicated that we need some type of live fire training structure. So where is, obviously, if you talk about a shooting range and you talk about a live fire training facility, that's an inconvenience for anybody in that immediate area, right? So what is the best suited place in the community for both of those initiatives? So as we start looking at what you all are familiar with as a firearms range, right, is wherever you're going to relocate that firearms range to, where potentially could we put our live fire training facility at the same place? So not forgetting one in both parts of those conversations, but also to looking at regional initiatives. Are any of our surrounding neighbors and jurisdictions interested in going into a regional type initiative to share that cost burden across multiple localities versus just in Warren County? So those conversations have been had. We were working, quite frankly, with our town partners because the town has a shooting range, and looking at how long could we potentially use that in even a town, county fire rescue type of training facility. We had some leadership changes at one, the town police, but also in the town's government. So we kind of await to see what that process looks like in that retrospect. So it's a work in progress. We blew off the 3-ring binder for our fire rescue training facility. We were working diligently on that project. Then COVID hit, and that kind of took precedence over the project. And we had Chief Bonzato come in for a leadership change. So obviously we've dusted that binder off. We've updated cost estimates, and we continue to work with our elected officials in county government to kind of revive some of that planning process.
Any other questions about that? Yes, ma'am.
Can the old Avtech property be used for that?
Yeah, that is on the benchmark of some of the impacts. Obviously, our public nuisance implications are relatively small. When you think of a live fire training center, that process really looks like either we utilize a propane gas, a natural gas, or a hay bale and pallets. So while it produces smoke, that is a non-toxic, like you would think of. We're not putting a tire in the room and burning a tire. While it's dirty smoke, because all smoke's dirty, it's not as bad as you would see from a house fire. What's great about the straw and pallet type smoke, it dissipates relatively quick. So any surrounding neighbors, etc. Ms. Cullers have seen kind of a site demographic of Fairfax County's cities. Live Fire Training Center is right next to a tank farm that houses fuel. Winchester City, Frederick County, less than 1,000 feet away from a residential property in neighborhood. So we kind of use that as a comparison and litmus test. But obviously, ma'am, to answer your question, while Avchex is a good site, understanding that it is surrounded by residential area, that has to go into that thought process and decision-making process for the powers to be.
And this was a point of contention when it was considered a transfer station. And everybody's important to me. Everybody's quality of life is important to me. And the number kept being thrown out that, we didn't care about that number. I care about all the numbers. But a small number versus a big, everybody looks at numbers when they're making decisions on things. But and I agree, that was not the best place to put it. And that's why it's, where is the best place to put it? And unfortunately, the place that I think would have been the perfect place to put it was old Camp 7 over on Winchester Road. I wish we had known that place was up for sale. I'm not sure we could have afforded it, but maybe a regional entity could have, because I think Clark County bought part of it. I've heard, I'm not sure if it's true, the National Guard's going to go into part of it. But, that would have been the perfect area. And Clark County uses Frederick County, so they could have maybe partnered with us. But it's water under the bridge there, so we're still trying to figure it out. And is that or is that not part of what this study is going to look at as well? I'm not.
Yeah, so we've asked that study to look at our support services. So they'll look at the training opportunities that we provide and the resources that it takes to provide those.
Yeah. So, you know, that not in my backyard, and it's got to go in somebody's backyard eventually. I mean, I don't know where, but it's definitely something we need because I think we all agree we want to give law enforcement and our fire guys what they need to do their job safely and the training they need to do that. And it's just where to put it and how to pay for it.
Is there any way they can do partnerships just like Falky or Age or anything?
We have looked at regional. I talked to Rappahannock, and if we get something regional going, they said they were interested because they don't have a place over there either. Shenandoah uses their landfill area. Frederick County uses their landfill area. So that's the reason that the transfer station was first looked at, is because that's, when you look at surrounding areas, that's where they are being placed, and the land is theirs. But you know, it still wasn't a good fit there. So trying to figure that out. So
What I asked.
it's not off the table. It is a work in progress, I guess, is what I would say. But we are looking at other sites, so it's not like that is the only site for consideration. There's still other sites being looked at, and this study is part of, you know, of outside looks of what's here and, you know, their insight on where it should go. And hopefully, I mean, I don't know how else fairly to do this than to have that outside, unbiased, has no dog in the fight, just looking at the entire county and says, out of everything, this is the best place to put us. Now, whether it'll still go there, that's going to be a decision, but hopefully that makes everybody a little more comfortable than what we were going to before. Yes, ma'am.
Does the regional jail have any extra property back there?
I asked. I sat in that meeting that night and I was texting with the superintendent, and I said, do you have a gun range? And he said, I wish. And I said, do you have any place for one? And he said, I wish. And he even sent me a picture of their area there. And you could stand and shoot a short range, but it's not enough to do what they are required to qualify on.
They'll hit on it.
They have to go somewhere else to do their qualifications. Yes, sir.
And Cheryl, if it did wind up in the county, I'll still be pulling on you all to consider private land acquisition, because balancing what it might cost to pick up a small farm that's surrounded by forested land could balance out against tax losses on homeowner impacts.
I'm open for that consideration. I think you're still going to get not in my backyard, even if we were to buy a farm. And to be honest, I wanted to buy the Morrison farm. I couldn't get the votes on the board to do it. I thought I had 3, and they backed out on me. If we had bought it, we would have had all that. Sorry, Mr. Bagley, but it's true. And I couldn't get the board consensus because I thought that would have been the best thing for the county to do to, number one, know that we had enough land area to mitigate any issues with anything coming out of that old landfill. But I couldn't get the votes. Any other questions? Well, I certainly appreciate everybody coming. We're at 4 o'clock, past 2 hours. I had 2 people come last time. So I really appreciate everybody's coming out, and my information is there. I also made cards that has the VDOT, how to contact the VDOT. If you have road problems, on the back of that card is how, if you live in a sanitary district, how to reach out with concerns to Public Works. And if you live in the town and have a street that has, I got that telephone number on there. Then the other card is a card that has Delegate Oates, Delegate Gilbert, and Senator French's telephone number and their email, so if you need to contact them. And you're welcome I've got more, and if there's none in the holders. My information's there. It's on the website. So please feel free to reach out to me because I'm here to represent you. So I want to hear from you how I'm doing. You get to critique my job. And thank you. I didn't have a day to a time.